Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some of us. Thank you all for coming to today's webinar. Me and my colleagues in Mitacs, as well as our close colleagues and partners at the High Commission in London, are super excited to talk to you today about a couple of opportunities. One is the opportunity that's available to Canadian companies and enterprise software to participate in the upcoming cohort for enterprise software at the Canadian Technology Accelerator with an upcoming deadline. So my colleagues from the Trade Commissioner Service in London are going to be able to speak to that. And then we're going to go into the second component of the webinar, which is to have you understand how the Mitacs programs, which you very much are more than likely familiar with, can actually fund some of what you're going to see in the Canadian Technology Accelerator, and then even down to the aspect of being able to pay for you to get to the in-market component. So without further ado, just because we do only have an hour, I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleagues in the High Commission, and they're going to talk to you first about the great opportunity, which is the Enterprise Software Canadian Technology Accelerator.
Gina, thank you very much. For us here in London, it's already 6:30 p.m., but good morning to those in the West Coast. Good afternoon to those in the East Coast and Atlantic Canada. I understand we have an audience from coast to coast. So my name is Claudio Ramirez. I'm the manager of the Canadian Technology Accelerator. I am accompanied by my colleagues, Joy and Sanjay. You will hear from them in a second. And first, we're going to talk a little bit about the Trade Commissioner Service. So for those of you who are not familiar with us, and I should have said, sorry, at the outset that we're very pleased to be working with Mitacs on this. Mitacs has been a great partner to Global Affairs Canada over the years, and I think that what we have in common is that we help connect the world by connecting minds, by connecting businesses, and so this is an exciting joint venture. The Trade Commissioner Service, so we're essentially a free service to help Canadian SMEs expand around the world. We've been around for over 125 years. As you can see on this map, we have a presence around the world. We're embedded with every Canadian High Commission, Canadian Embassy, Canadian Consulate across the globe. And also we have offices across Canada, which usually is your first touch point when you want to do business abroad. Of course, we're in London, where we cover the UK, which means England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Next slide. So our services, business advisory, we're going to help prepare you for international markets, which means we're going to give you an assessment about your technology, whether it can have traction in our market, what the opportunity is, what the competitive landscape is, what the regulatory requirements are, what the political context might be. If you have any troubles and need any support from us, it may be with regard to customs, with regard to taxation, all the different aspects and challenges and pitfalls of doing business abroad are things that we can help you with, whether you need channel partners or distributors, and what are the strategies to be successful, essentially. So we have all the services that are listed on this slide, and I just gave you sort of a bit of an overview of what we can do for Canadian startups, for Canadian innovators that are looking to expand abroad. Next slide. So I talked about our network. We also have funding that we provide to Canadian SMEs. We have different pockets of fund, but the most popular one is the Canadian CanExport SME program. You can find information about the eligibility and what it covers on our website, which is tradecommissioners.gc.ca. But on the third column, you can see that one of our special services is called the Canadian Technology Accelerator, and that's what we wanted to focus on today. Next slide. So essentially the CTAs, or Canadian Technology Accelerators, are a new initiative by the Trade Commissioner Service to really try to segment our clients. We serve about 13,000 SMEs every year, but not all the SMEs are the same. So we created this special program for those SMEs that have proprietary technology that is disruptive, companies that have scalability that we consider to be, in other words, high growth, high potential. And we created these initially in the United States, where there are big pockets of venture capital funds, such as New York, Boston, Silicon Valley. And two new ones were created after we expanded into Asia and Europe. And London is one of the newer outfits, as you can see on this slide. Next. So the support that you get for Canadian Technology Accelerators is essentially a modular program where through our partners, our local partners and experts in different fields of technology, whether it's medtech and life sciences, whether it's agri-tech, whether it's digital tech, or specifically enterprise software, which is going to be the subject of our next cohort, are going to provide you one-on-one coaching, but also some group mentoring in order to really help you pitch your technology to potential investors if you're looking to raise capital, or to potential customers if you're more into a go-market strategy of generating sales abroad. Next slide. So I just talked about some of the niches or the clusters that we're focusing on. Earlier this year, we had our first ever cohort on digital energy solutions. The upcoming one that starts in February, which we're going to talk about in more detail in a second, will focus on enterprise software. And next year already, we're thinking about doing something on fintech, something potentially on cybersecurity, something potentially on hydrogen, in conjunction with other missions across Europe. So we're going to continue to focus on what we call these, essentially the sectors of tomorrow. Next slide. So unlike some of the business incubators and accelerators that you may be familiar with, or that you may be even be a tenant of, we actually don't take equity in the companies that we accelerate. And we don't make any direct investments ourselves in them. Well, rather what we do is that we're going to provide you support. The only fee that you need to pay, or the only investment that you need to make in order to participate, is the travel to London, and to the UK, I should say, which is the in-market portion, where we're going to have you here during a full week to put into practice everything that you've learned through the virtual program. Next slide. So the reason why we've expanded to London, among others, and some of the reasons why we've been successful, you can see them on this slide. Essentially, we've been running many cohorts throughout the year, and the results have been rather impressive. The companies that have gone through the Canadian Technology Accelerators have raised over, as you can see, over $100 million in capital, generated sales of over 300 million. So it's really a specialized program that has shown really good return on investment for the companies that participate in them. Next slide. One of the benefits is that also you'll be part of an alumni network. And essentially, after you graduate from one of our programs, you'll be again taken care of by, like I said at the outset, a trade commissioner at a regional office. And we, as well in London, will continue to see how you're growing, follow up on your adventures in the UK. And then among yourselves as alumni, you're going to be able to continue to share best practices, continue to do some cross-pollination, and really create a community of practice so that you can support each other in your growth. Next slide. So what we're looking for in the CTAs are essentially companies, like I said, that have high potential, high growth, that have scalability, that are well-resourced, that are motivated and committed. It is an 8-week program, so we're going to require about 4 hours per week of your time. And we're looking for companies that have a strong, not only technology, but a strong management team. And all of those eligibility criteria and essentially what the program entails are available in great detail on our website, where we were going to funnel you at the end of this webinar so that you can apply and be part of our next cohort. Next slide. So again, like one of the other things or criteria rather is that we're looking to build inclusive cohorts. This is part of our commitment to diversity and inclusion. And by that, we mean companies that are led or owned by women, but also by underrepresented groups, and companies that hopefully represent all of Canada, from British Columbia all the way to PEI. Next slide. You may recognize some of these companies, but see, so these are essentially past participants to Canadian Technology Accelerators over the past few years. So we're going to turn now to our Canada-UK commercial relations, because I want to emphasize as well why the UK should matter to you. So I think we have a little video coming up in the next slide. All right. So I hope that you could hear it. I had some problems over here, but at any rate, why London? Why the UK? So in the next slide, this is the pitch and sort of the rationale as to why we want you to come to the UK and participate in this cohort. It's a big market. In terms of merchandise goods, it's our third largest customer in the world after the United States and China. We sell Canada, that is, twice as much to the UK as we do to Mexico, with which we have, as you know, a trilateral agreement, very deep and very complex supply chains. And even if we look to our neighbor to the south, France, well, Canada sells 4 times as much to the UK as we do to France. So really a big economy. And in the area of services, which is going to be the focus, of course, of our next cohort and most of our cohorts, then the UK is our second largest export market in the world after the United States. It's also a success story on the investment side. The UK is our second largest foreign investor in Canada, and it's also the second destination of our foreign direct investment abroad. We have a continuity agreement based on the fact that we had negotiated an agreement with CETA and when the UK was part of the EU, but we're currently sort of respecting in terms of the tariff elimination and the rules of doing business with one another. But we're negotiating a free trade agreement, a standalone free trade agreement in Canada and the UK presently. So really large communities, both in the UK and in Canada. You're going to find a lot of companies that you're familiar with, and a good community of mentors that are going to help you get more familiar with the UK market. Next slide. On the research front as well, the UK is our third largest R&D partner around the world. It's really an innovation hub. We wouldn't have had one of the COVID vaccines without Oxford University, for example. It's one of the countries that has been the most successful in commercializing technology and being early adopters. And just as we have a technology triangle in Canada, for example, in Toronto, Kitchener, and Waterloo, you have the Oxford, Cambridge, and London technology triangle here that is one of the most potent and one of the most productive in the world. So this is also, if you're more on the early stage and you want tech validation, we have other programs for you than the CTA, but this is good for you to know that we have really, really good R&D partners across our stakeholders here in the United Kingdom. Next slide. So I'm going to stop right here. I've been talking too much. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Sanjay, who's going to talk to you more about the UK tech ecosystem.
Great. Thanks very much, Claudio. So just to qualify the technology opportunity and specifically enterprise software, the tech industry in the UK is valued in 2021, 312 billion Canadian dollars. So as Claudio explained, this is it's a big number. It's a big overall opportunity for exporters, and particularly exporters from Canada, which is what we're most interested in. And the story of technology is beyond London. So what I'm trying to say in this slide is, listen, there are pockets of and clusters of media and cyber security excellence in Manchester, in Bristol, for example, smart cities, quantum computing, in Edinburgh. So I was in Edinburgh last month, where they have an amazing organization called the Data Lab, which is doing everything with enterprises and universities in the Scotland area, but beyond Scotland, in terms of opportunities for leveraging data for value. So better value from processes, that includes data, better value to monetize data, and better value to better decision making from data. So we feel that the UK is beyond a London-only story, which traditionally has focused in much more on financial services, technologies, and software related to the financial services cluster. Next slide, please. We follow the money. So when we look at VC investment and what's happening in the UK vis-a-vis other markets, the US obviously is far and wide beyond other markets, but certainly UK in the context of what's happening has received $15.6 billion US worth of investment so far in 2022, and the trend has been upward. So when you look at previous years, despite COVID, despite hiccups that we've had in the overall economy, and certainly where the tailwinds are looking slightly downwards, the numbers for technology and what's happening in the tech industry from a VC community and investments are still very strong. Next slide, please. And the deal volume in terms of Q3 2022, so some of our sources, again, we're seeing information technology, i.e. the IT industry, receive just under £1 billion pounds worth of investment in 144 deals, compared to some other industries, for example, in energy or in financial services or in healthcare. The number for VC, both in number of deals and the value of deals, remains high. Next slide, please. And when we look at the UK in the context of Europe, again, we're double what France has received, Germany has received, in terms of where the money is flowing, particularly from venture capital. There are lots of other sources of funds, of course, angel funds, corporate venture funds. There are funds that are from private equity. So some of those numbers are not included in this, but again, the overall numbers stack up well for the UK, and in terms of what we are trying to show today, which is qualify the opportunity a bit more for our audiences, is yes, this is lots of money is being raised and invested in tech that's being developed, being applied in UK enterprises. Next slide, please. Yeah, Carol.
All right, thank you very much, Sanjay. So, Sanjay is our resident expert on ICT and enterprise software. So I should say that even if your company applies to be part of this cohort and is not selected, you'll be able to reach out to Sanjay and have a one-on-one conversation with him about how the UK can represent a good market for your international expansion. I'm going to turn it over to Joy, who's going to talk to you about this upcoming CTA program on enterprise software.
Thanks, Claudio. Hi, everybody. My name is Joy, and I'm the coordinator for the CTA here in the UK. And now I'll be speaking to you particularly about the program that we're eager to launch in the first quarter of next year. Like Claudio said, it will be in February of 2023, and it will cover the enterprise software subsector. So with regards to joining, the benefits of joining the CTA, Claudio has already pointed out a lot of the benefits, the innumerable benefits that you can have by joining. But I'd like to point out in particular the fact that joining the program in February 2023 is really going to allow companies looking to enter the UK market to get everything you need to successfully penetrate this foreign market through tailored sessions that will provide key insights, as well as really the subtleties of doing business in the UK. I know that when we were speaking to CTA Network worldwide, a lot of what comes up as benefits that participants pointed to that they enjoyed in particular is the ability to connect with key stakeholders in the market that you wouldn't have otherwise access to. And as mentioned, the TCS network is really vast, as each location has a dedicated trade commissioner who's an expert in the field, just like Sanjay. And they've developed an extensive network of connections that companies can leverage. So that's just one of the many benefits. I should also add that we're looking into the possibility of having this cohort participate in additional programming in the Irish market. So that is really an added value for successful applicants. As you know, many giant tech companies such as Meta, Facebook, LinkedIn, Airbnb, to name just a few, are all located in Dublin. And Ireland is a great stepping stone towards the EU market. So for those who want to expand in that geographic area, there is that added benefit of joining our next program. With regards to what we are looking for, Claudio has mentioned some requirements. You can see that we're looking for innovative Canadian companies with technology in these areas listed here. We're also looking for companies with a product, having a product with the right fit for the market, with a strong go-to-market plan in the UK, with the ability to define and articulate your target market, and really a strong executive management that can commit to participate during the entirety of the program. As mentioned, we are going to be sending the link to our call for applicants webpage on the Trade Commissioner's site. So the link is going to be shared in a follow-up email after this presentation. And we really do strongly encourage diversity and inclusion in trade. So we encourage companies led by Canadians of all backgrounds to apply to this program. And how the program will work. So it will be an 8-week hybrid program. It will start sometime in February of 2023, basically with 7 weeks of programming that will be done through masterclass sessions. And it will culminate with an in-market event here in London that will give the companies an opportunity to network and do business B2B meetings with stakeholders here. And it will start off with needs assessment at the very beginning so that we can really tailor what we're offering to the participants. And just to give you an idea as to what that programming will look like, you will see here that half the sessions from week 2 to week 7 is going to incorporate one-to-one mentoring and coaching sessions. And then the other half will focus on those master classes covering a wide variety of topics, really, and from an overview of the ecosystem here in the UK to fundraising, to labor laws, IP, taxation. So you'll see there are many topics that will be covered. And as you can see as well, there will be opportunities to practice your pitch, as it's a crucial component in being able to present your value proposition to key stakeholders here in the most effective way. And this is just really a notional agenda to give you an idea of what will be prepared, and those selected for the cohort will be given more information, particularly with the in-market event, so that they can prepare for that portion. I mean, I can tell you how amazing the CTA is, but I think it would really be better if one of our previous participants tell you what they've experienced with the last cohort that we had here in the UK. So I'm just going to play a video on what they had to say.
Hi, my name is Myrna Bittner, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Run With It Synthetics. We had the fortune to be part of this year's Canadian Technology Accelerator cohort in the UK, promoting our advanced simulation, synthetic data, and 3D visualization platform in the energy sector to help cities and regions accelerate their decarbonization targets. The CTA program provided us with the insight into the UK energy market that we needed to learn and develop our market fit, refine our target audience, and implement our go-to-market strategy. We had a wonderful in-person experience that allowed us to connect with key stakeholders in the region and had great conversations with different groups that are still ongoing. We're looking forward to finalizing a consortium agreement with one of the UK's main energy research organizations that will enable us to refine a product for specific use in the UK and EU market. I would like to thank the trade commissioners for the amazing work that they have done and for the opportunity to participate in the Canada-UK CTA 2022 program.
I hope everyone was able to hear that.
Yes.
Perfect. So I'll turn it over to Claudio. We do have a message from the High Commissioner. So would you like to introduce that, Claudio?
Yes, absolutely. So this essentially concludes our presentation, and what better way to sort of have a cherry on the top and having our big boss, our High Commissioner of Canada to the UK, personally invite you to apply. And so go ahead, run the little video, Troy, please.
Canada's second biggest market in the world for Canadian services. And the technology industry is at the very heart of this economy, with a turnover of $312 billion per year. The Canadian Technology Accelerator is thus launching an enterprise software program in February of 2023. Apply now. The deadline is December the 14th. We look forward to helping your business grow in the UK.
So fantastic. I couldn't see him. I could hear him. Hopefully you could see him. But like I said, this concludes our little pitch to you. We're going to now turn it over back to our colleagues at MyTax. So Gina, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Claudio and team. So I want to make sure that there is enough time at the end to ask questions. So I will make sure to jump right into things. I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. So again, really what we're going to touch on in this component is from what you've learned about the Canadian Technology Accelerator and the opportunities that it offers you, some ways that you can now think of MyTax in a different light that will amplify your CTA participation and complement any international innovation activities that you pursue. So we all know MyTax. Hopefully a lot of you would have received the introduction from MyTax. And so just a little reminder, we are an independent not-for-profit here in Canada, coast to coast, in all territories as well, that really just help Canadian companies find solutions to their innovation problems or their innovation gaps via working with academics, both the professors and researchers in the labs, but also the talent and the students that are embedded within those institutions as well. So how can MyTax help you? Well, just to give a little bit of a linear view on how MyTax can support your global growth, there are a few programs that can help when you use them right to refine your technology, to bring it to that global readiness level and to bring it to that commercialization level that is also going to be able to withstand the competitivity line in international markets. Of course, beyond your technology, your service and your product, your company and your organization and your operations also need to be prepared to go into those global markets. So we'll talk about how some of our programs can support you with that. Of course, one of the most exciting ones is the ways to actually get to your market, to explore, to have that in-person network building experience within those markets where you're wanting to expand. And then lastly, how MyTax can help you once you are in those markets to create an innovation community and to be able to access that innovation community via our programs to give you a little bit of vitality and that long-standing sustainable network to really have a long-term growth within those new markets. So the first one, again, is being able to refine your product or service. And many of you, I'm going to think, are going to be pretty aware or familiar with this model that we have. And this is just the bread and butter to MyTax. So what you would be doing is you would be working with expert supervised skilled talent in a Canadian institution to take that idea, to take that technology and again, bring it to a level that it is not only commercial ready, but also that it is competitive, not only here domestically, but also abroad. Of course, on top of that cherry of us supporting you to not only find that talent and match make you with the skills and expertise in institutions, we're also here to help you de-risk that investment in that collaboration and offer you what essentially is a 50-50% cost sharing model to have those interns work on your project while supervised by the experts in their institutions. We are agnostic to discipline and sector, which really allows for you to use us in the full breadth of the TRL scale. So right from that very fundamental research, but also if you want to access and bring in some other fields that aren't necessarily perfectly, typically aligned with your sector, you're able to do so. And then of course it is a customizable model essentially in terms of the length. And so if there's something really short term that you just want to explore, starting at 4 months, we can get you an intern anywhere from college up until recent graduates. That was an expansion on our eligibility recently. And then long term into up to about 5 years. And so I always like to say that the MyTax programs that will help your product get to this level are customizable in terms of up and out. So up in the terms of how many stakeholders are involved, and then out in terms of the amount of time. So an example of how a company was able to use this, a software engineering company called Experience First Design used their collaboration with interns from the University of Saskatchewan in computer science to actually make sure that the certain elements of their games were going to be expert-oriented market ready. And so they made sure that from that very fundamental engineering level of the technology they were creating was going to hit that standard of global market readiness. And so they just used our standard program, but just made sure to integrate a few objectives into that technical project that had the idea of global readiness and market competitivity, international market competitivity in mind. The next part of that linear progression is, of course, to make sure that your company, your strategy, your operations, your organization is really prepped and knowledgeable about the markets that you want to go into. And we released a new program that is a little bit more competitive than some of our other programs, but essentially that program, as well as our bread and butter program, are able to help you, depending on how you position it, to help you build an international strategy. And so you can work with, econ students, international business students, law students to, for example, do market intelligence and business development strategies. You could bring on those students to look at how your company fits into the free trade agreements, positioning yourself in those and analyzing those. And then, of course, again, you could bring on law students or legal studies students to do international intellectual property strategies, especially if you're going to enter into joint ventures. And these are, again, short to long term. So depending on what your company needs and the amount that you're able to invest in that cost sharing model, you can think about those collaborative academic projects in this light as well. In terms of a case study, we actually had another digital tech and digital media company called SpeechBubble work with a business student to map out how the European market would respond to social computing. And so this was not the business strategy internship, which is more marketing strategy focused. This was still our research and innovation focused program. And they just did a broader analysis of how that certain kind of technology was going to be received within the European market. And again, this could be with a business student. You could bring on a psychology student to see how a certain demographic would receive it. It's really, since it's so multidimensional, you're able to create that solution as your company needs it. As I mentioned, one of the most exciting ones, especially for this cohort and I guess just the Canadian Technology Accelerator Program in general, is our MyTax Entrepreneur International Program, which at the end of the day is a travel grant of up to $5,000 Canadian for 2 full-time employees to travel to an international market of interest and design those new international ventures within that market. And this could be looking for buyers, to start exporting. This could be for meeting and identifying potential collaborators on joint ventures, especially within, as we'll see in the next slide, if you wanted to do an international MyTax project with international academics. This could also be to, in this case specifically, attend things like the Canadian Technology Accelerators. As mentioned, it is up to $5,000 this fiscal and this fiscal only. It is not a cost sharing model. So if the budget of your trip is $5,000, we will give you $5,000. Going into next fiscal, there may be a change to the program that would make it a cost sharing model. So if your trip was $5,000, MyTax would give you $2,500, and then you would also put in $2,500. The eligibility for this, again, we are still sector and discipline agnostic, obviously within the Canadian Technology Accelerator context. It is very specifically towards the software enterprise companies. And but in the one eligibility criteria that we do have is that you need to be based at an approved incubator or accelerator that is linked to a Canadian institution. And so if you contact one of our MyTax advisors that are on the line, or the one that you have the connection with from your incubator and accelerator, then you'll be able to figure out that eligibility. And then the other component is that the opportunity that you're going to explore, you need to have essentially a landing pad in that international market. And good news, especially in this context, the Canadian Technology Accelerator offered by Global Affairs Canada and the Trade Commissioner Service and the High Commission is eligible by MyTax standards. So you are already covered on that base. Moving on to the next way that MyTax can support you. And as I mentioned, it's very similar to that first slide. It's just rather than engaging with Canadian academics, you're actually engaging with international academics. And so in this case specifically, say you were to go to the UK as part of the Canadian Technology Accelerator, and you were to meet with researchers in a UK institution that are doing very cutting edge research in your field, we would be willing to help you fund those relationships and fund interns to be the human bridge between yourself and that researcher or that professor at the institution. You are also able to scale the amount of industry partners. So if you and a UK company wanted to do a joint venture and co-host interns from either a Canadian or a UK university, we would also be able to help support in that. It's the same co-funding cost sharing model. It is still agnostic to discipline and sector, and it's still that scalable model for you to be able to have multidimensional collaborations. In this case, specifically for the case study, we had a company called Paradigm Research Limited work with the University of Exeter on kinesiology products to see how their web-based applications could be more efficient in using data that they were gathering. Again, they really wanted to work with one of the world-leading kinesiology research institutions, which was at the U of E, and they were able to do so via MyTax funds, and the interns from the University of Exeter were able to work between the Canadian company and their institution, having stipends and salaries and research costs paid by MyTax. So in terms of next steps, again, just making sure that we do have at least a little bit of time for questions. First and foremost, of course, with the upcoming deadline, make sure that you put your attention to applying to the Canadian Technology Accelerator first with that deadline of the 14th. Super important. Once you have that application in, book your meeting with the MyTax advisor to do a funding program assessment. And what that means is that they're going to listen to you. They're going to say, what is it that your company is wanting to achieve in the UK? What is it that your company is wanting to achieve even domestically or in other markets? And they'll be able to essentially prescriptively tell you the different ways that our different programs would be able to support you. During that time, I'm sure we'll get back if you are successful in being a part of the CTA cohort. And if you are, you can get right into the process of applying to your Entrepreneur International application, which would get you that $5,000 to actually attend the in-market portion. And then alongside the advisor, you would, once you get that application in, be able to start building out some of those other projects that we mentioned in some of the other slides, whether that be the market assessment, whether that be a potential proposal to find academics in British or UK universities that match the profile you're looking for. And then, of course, the end of it is to begin that cohort, begin those projects, and start to receive funding. As always, thank you to our funders, the Canadian government, the provinces. And without further ado, I would love to go into questions because we've thrown quite a bit of information at you. And so would love to make sure that everyone leaves prepared and with the knowledge that they need to go and get into those applications. So I'll leave that there and ask that maybe our other speakers come on and we'll pay attention to some of these questions. I'm just going to quickly. Okay. So I have one of the questions here, which I think is for myself, because it would be for the MyTax Entrepreneur International Program, which does Communitech count for the University Linked Incubator? As I know right now, Communitech is considered a regional or community-based incubator without an actual formal organizational attachment to an institution, so they would not be eligible. I do have a couple of colleagues on the line, so they might be able to correct me in the chat if that's not correct, but for Communitech, I think that's where it sits. The next question, is there a cap to the co-funded financial model? The slide said starting at 7,500 for that MyTax program. The cap, I don't think there is a formal cap per se. We've seen multi-million-dollar projects. I think one of the largest projects that we have to date is out of those 4 months, 7,500, what we call blocks. We've seen upwards of 420 of them, I think. So it can get quite large as long as you're willing to put forward that funding contribution. Does this MyTax program work with the soft landing program? I'm wondering if that's specifically speaking to the Canadian Technology Accelerator, which yes, it does. So you are able to use those $5,000 to pay essentially for your travel costs to get to the in-market portion of the Canadian Technology Accelerator. And I'm going to assume that this one is for our colleagues at the High Commission. How many spaces are available for the program?
Sure, I will happily take that one. We're looking at about 8 to 12 companies. Maybe we'll land on the 10 as a sweet spot. So that's something we believe to be manageable, and based on experience, it tends to work really well.
Perfect. And as I understand, Claudio, even if a company doesn't get into the program with all of those added components, they're still able to access the Trade Commissioner service for those other services that you mentioned at the beginning. So it's not that they're just out for the count, but they
absolutely
have support.
We understand there may be members in the audience who are very early stage. They're still at the proof of concept, pre-sale, pre-commercialization. We have an MOU on the research and development with the UK and programs directed at them that are co-funded by both governments. But also there may be companies that are maybe too mature or who already are doing business in the UK, and therefore the CTA might not be the best fit for them, but we can certainly continue to support their continued progress into this market.
And just to mention as well, within the same light, obviously the Canadian Technology Accelerator has a very curated program with a lot of wonderful supports. And MyTax is a great fit to complement what our colleagues in the High Commission are putting together for you. But the successful application to the Canadian Technology Accelerator also doesn't limit you to still access my tax programs. You are still able to access our programs, and say, for example, you are in that early stage and not quite mature enough to participate. My Taxes is a great way to bring on those skills and expertise at a lower financial burden to get your company to that level. I'm not sure how many cohorts that the Canadian Technology Accelerator has a year. I know they're always in different sectors, but of course it would help you get to that level that one day you would be able to participate if you're not quite at that maturity level or at that global readiness level to actually be successful within the application. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. We still have 10 minutes, but just to honor everyone's time, I guess we'll, oh, unless there is one more, sorry, one more. Does Mars Discovery District count as a university linked accelerator, or is there a list of approved accelerators? So there is a list. What I would suggest, Mike, is that you connect with one of our advisors. We will be sending out on Wednesday a wrap-up email. The email will give you who your main advisor supports are on our team to help you navigate the application process and the proposals. And they would be able to provide you with that list of university linked accelerators that are approved for the travel grant program. Unfortunately, it's not a public link that we have or resource that we have at this time, but it is something that our advisors would be able to share with you directly. All right. Okay. Well, if there's no further questions, thank you everyone for attending. As mentioned, the recording as well as the deck slides will be sent out sometime this week. And of course, you have the presenters here and the My Tax advisors that are also on the line available to you if you have any questions. And then just a last reminder that there is that deadline of the 14th. So that is coming up. So just make sure to get that out of the way first and then approach some of the other programs post. Okay. Thank you all.